Never before had a U.S. president refused to admit defeat. Never before had a president alleged the election was stolen. At the moment, the crowd outside got closer and the police were pushed back. The scaffolding set up for the upcoming inauguration scaled. 140 officers were injured. Trump eventually appeared on camera and appealed to the rioters to leave.
So go home.
It's been more than 4 years since the United States Capitol was stormed on January 6, 2021, a moment that stunned the world and appeared to mark one of the darkest days in American democracy. The imagery was unforgettable: mobs breaking windows, lawmakers in hiding, and a sitting president accused of inciting it all. In the immediate aftermath, there was bipartisan outrage. There were promises of accountability. There were calls for justice. And yet Donald J. Trump, the man at the center of it all, not only evaded criminal conviction in the Senate, but managed to retain his political influence, launching another campaign for president and remaining the dominant figure in the Republican Party. So how exactly did he get away with it? To understand how Trump slipped past consequences for what many believed was a blatant attack on the democratic process, you need to look at a perfect storm of political calculation, institutional limitations, media manipulation, and a cult of personality that has proven nearly untouchable.
The Democrats are asserting that Trump's role in inciting the riot was, quote, unmistakable. In a trial memo that they're seeking to see if Trump can be disqualified from office. But the central
prior to the mob storming the Capitol is freedom of speech, and that he cannot be punished for the things he said at this politically inclined rally.
First, the impeachment process failed to hold Trump accountable. Just a week after the insurrection, the House of Representatives moved swiftly and voted to impeach Trump for incitement of insurrection. 10 Republicans joined Democrats, making it the most bipartisan impeachment in U.S. history. But in the Senate, where a 2/3 majority was required for conviction, only 7 Republicans broke ranks. The rest either deflected, argued the process was rushed, or claimed it was unconstitutional to impeach a president who had already left office. That argument conveniently ignored the fact that Trump was impeached while still in office and that a conviction could have barred him from running again.
And they're also going to go ahead and make the argument that the Democrats' process on this has been particularly rushed and particularly partisan. Hearings, fewer sort of going through of the facts, but then again, of course, you can argue that that wasn't necessarily needed, as lawmakers were in the building when this occurred.
Only 5 Republicans voted in a way that would suggest that they would be willing to vote to impeach the former president.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell gave a speech after voting to acquit, saying Trump was practically and morally responsible for the attack, but he insisted the courts were the appropriate venue for justice. It was political theater. McConnell wanted to have it both ways, denounce Trump without alienating his base. That sentiment echoed across much of the GOP. They knew Trump had crossed a line, but they also knew their political futures were tethered to his influence over millions of loyal voters.
Former President Trump's actions preceded the riot were disgraceful. President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events, but in this case, the question is moot because former President Trump is constitutionally not eligible for conviction.
Then there was the Department of Justice. For months, critics questioned why Merrick Garland's DOJ was moving so slowly on potential criminal charges against Trump. While over 1,000 rioters were arrested and charged, some with serious offenses like seditious conspiracy, Trump remained untouched. The DOJ insisted it was following the evidence wherever it leads, but the delay was seen by many as a signal that the justice system treats powerful men differently. Special counsel Jack Smith was eventually appointed and did bring federal charges against Trump in 2023 for his attempts to overturn the election. But those charges were separate from the events of January 6th itself, and due to endless legal maneuvering, appeals, and delays, those cases may not even go to trial before the 2024 election. Meanwhile, Trump continued to control the narrative. He rebranded the rioters as patriots, called those imprisoned for attacking the Capitol hostages, and insisted that the 2020 election was stolen despite all evidence to the contrary. Conservative media amplified those lies. Right-wing pundits framed the attack as a protest gone too far rather than a coup attempt. And for millions of Americans, the repetition of this message slowly eroded the seriousness of what actually happened. The January 6 House Select Committee did conduct a thorough investigation and presented damning evidence, including Trump's knowledge that the crowd was armed, his refusal to call them off, and his pressure campaign on Vice President Mike Pence to reject electoral votes. But the committee had no prosecutorial power. It could only recommend. And by the time it concluded its work, much of the public had already moved on, numbed by the relentless chaos of the Trump era and skeptical that anything would truly stick. What allowed Trump to survive January 6th wasn't just legal loopholes or political cowardice, it was his unmatched ability to weaponize grievance. He transformed being held accountable into a form of persecution. Every indictment became election interference. Every investigation became a witch hunt. His followers didn't see a man escaping justice, they saw a warrior under siege. The more he was investigated, the stronger their devotion grew. And Trump knew this. He didn't retreat after January 6th, he doubled down. Another critical factor in Trump's escape was the GOP's slow but total capitulation. At first, there were cracks. Some Republicans flirted with breaking free. Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, and a handful of others stood firm in denouncing Trump, but they were quickly ostracized, primaried, or pushed out of power. In their place, MAGA loyalists surged. Even those who once condemned Trump, like Kevin McCarthy, came crawling back, visiting him at Mar-a-Lago and begging for political forgiveness. It was a stark message. There would be no cost for supporting Trump. The real risk was crossing him. The justice system, while not explicitly designed to handle authoritarian threats from within, also struggled. Prosecutors were cautious, judges were deliberate, and Trump's legal team played the delay game to perfection. His strategy wasn't about winning in court, it was about running out the clock. And in American law, justice delayed often means justice denied. There's also the sheer novelty of what happened. The U.S. had never seen a sitting president incite a violent mob to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power. There was no clear precedent, no easy script to follow. The system wasn't built for this kind of stress test. It assumed a baseline of good faith, of respect for norms. Trump shattered those assumptions, and in the chaos that followed, the institutions meant to protect democracy floundered. On top of all this, there was public fatigue. After 4 years of constant crisis, the pandemic, economic turmoil, and political division, many Americans just wanted to move on. Trump's base was energized, but others felt exhausted. The will to pursue lengthy accountability waned. Even as new revelations emerged, the outrage felt diluted. Trump benefited from the sheer volume of his scandals. Each one numbed the impact of the next. Ultimately, Trump got away with January 6th because America let him. Not just politicians or judges, but collectively. Through inaction, through fear, through exhaustion, he exposed the vulnerabilities of the system and then exploited them in plain sight. The question is not whether he incited the insurrection, he did. The question is whether a country that prides itself on the rule of law can ever summon the courage to enforce it when the violator is someone powerful enough to bend it. And so, as he runs once again for the presidency, Donald Trump does so with a full understanding of what he can get away with. January 6th wasn't just a tragedy. It was a test, and the results are still unfolding.